Okay, well, my name is Dave DuBois. I am the New Mexico State Climatologist, and I will be presenting this spring on the topic of weather and climate. So that should be a very interesting set of lectures, 4 lectures all in total. And the first one we're going to talk about is history of weather measurements. And that is a fascinating topic because it involves both history and technology and both the phenomena that we're measuring, like rain, hail, snow, tornadoes, severe weather, flooding, things like that. So we're going to first talk about some of the history of the measurements themselves, so like who invented what, and then talk about things and when did measurements start. For instance, looking back on the Anasazis, for instance, is what did they look at, how did they look at weather, and then looking at going all the way to the present. So how do we measure climate and weather today, and putting that into context and what is out there in New Mexico and what are some of the ways we measure weather impacts. Okay, and the second lecture will be on March 19th. Did I say the first one will be on March 17th and the second one will be on March 19th, and we're going to talk about specific weather patterns in New Mexico. So we'll be talking about some of the things that we've been looking at over the past few years. I'll do a summary of 2013 and look at some of the ways we gauge the weather, the different types of patterns, some of the climatology. I think that'll be very interesting. And then we'll talk a little bit about extremes, because that's always one of the things people actually remember is like, when was the last time we had big floods, or in this drought we're in, is how long has it been, and when was the last time did we have drought in New Mexico, and how frequently do they occur? And looking back on, say, the paleo records, going back and looking at tree rings and things like that, how frequent did this kind of drought happen? So some big questions that a lot of people are very interested in. And then we'll look at things like mitigation. Like cloud seeding is another question that I get a lot about, and like, what is cloud seeding and how does it work, and then does it actually work? The third lecture will be on March 24th, and we're going to cover the topic of air pollution, history and effects. And that's one thing that as residents in New Mexico, we are blessed to have really nice, good air quality compared to places like Houston or Los Angeles or New York, or even, heaven forbid, like in China. If you've been following the news on what's going on in Shanghai and Beijing, we are very clean here, and I'll talk about why we are clean. And then when we do get bad air quality, I'll tackle on what are their causes. For instance, like wildfires is a big one in the summertime. And in the springtime, we get dust storms. And so what are the impacts? What are the health implications for those? How frequently do they occur? How bad is it? And what areas in New Mexico have a little better, a little worse? So those are some of the very interesting topics that are we'll be talking on the March 24th lecture. And then the fourth lecture will be the March 26th, and we're going to talk about climate change. So I'm going to tackle, we talked a little bit about paleo records, so I'm going to start it from the past, move into the current, and then work on, what are some of the ways that we can look at potential future outcomes, more of the climate change over time. What are the main phenomena, what is the physical basis for it, and then what are some of the things how do we actually know in terms of modeling, what are some of the outcomes, how do they work? So that we're going to look at putting things into context is the main thing here, in finding out what are some of the ways we do that as a community of climatologists, and how do we look at climate in terms of the perspective of how does it impact us, how does it impact our economy, our society, our health, all those different things, and how we eat, and and then look at some of the past experiences from other societies who have gone through climate change, and how do they cope and mitigate and adapt to things. So that should be a very interesting one, and a lot of questions, and it's one of the topics I really enjoy covering, so it should be really good.
Great.